Good evening, dear Medyascope viewers. Welcome to This Week in Turkey. This evening, we'll be talking about the EU leaders' declaration on Turkey as a result of the summit held yesterday. Our guest is Çiğdem Nas, faculty member at the Department of Political Science and International Relations at Yıldız Technical University and Secretary General of the Economic Development Foundation. But first, let's take a look at the developments of the week. On March 20th, President Erdogan issued a decree to withdraw from the Istanbul Convention. From Turkish women to the United States president, the withdrawal from a treaty that prevents and combats violence against women and domestic violence were harshly criticized.
Also known as the Council of Europe Convention on Preventing and Combating Violence Against Women and Domestic Violence, the convention aims to preventing gender-based violence, protecting victims, and to end the impunity of perpetrators. Following the midnight decree published in the official gazette, the decision began to be denounced by many Turkish citizens, including women's rights defenders, lawyers, and politicians. Hashtags took over the feeds of various social media accounts, stressing that it is not possible for Turkey to withdraw from an international convention with a presidential decree, as it was unanimously approved at the parliament. Those who oppose the convention say that this harms the traditional family structures and values, pointing to a clause that talks about gender as LGBT propaganda. On March 21, an official statement regarding the withdrawal came from the Presidential Communications Director Fahrettin Altun. The statement read that the Istanbul Convention, originally intended to promote women's rights, was hijacked by a group of people attempting to normalize homosexuality, which is incompatible with Turkey's social and family values. Hence, the decision to withdraw. The Turkish opposition parties slammed this decision. Among the many names that publicly denounced the withdrawal decision, the women leaders in the political field took the initiative. The vice chair of Turkey's main opposition, Republican People's Party, Gökçe Gökçen, said that the party will offer legal aid for appeals. Gökçen stated that,
"We will pursue all legal remedies against this decision. We will both appeal to the Council of State ourselves and give legal assistance to those who want to file a lawsuit if they need such assistance."
İYİ Party Chair Meral Akşener spoke at the party's group meeting and underlined that the convention was repealed through a signature of President Erdogan.
Erdogan withdrew from the Istanbul Convention with an unlawful authority that completely ignores national will. This excess of power is a usurpation of our nation's freedom. If you intend to harm the legal system of Turkey, give up before it is too late.
Women in several provinces across Turkey took to the streets to protest the decree. One of the centers of protest was Istanbul's Kadıköy district. Thousands of women gathered at the square to denounce withdrawal from the convention. Retract the decision, implement the convention. We won't keep quiet, we are not afraid, and we will not obey. And Istanbul Convention saves lives were some of the slogans chanted among the crowd. The We Will Stop Femicides platform also held a protest at Taksim Square. The protesters, carrying purple flags and LGBTI+ signs, gathered on the main Istiklal Avenue after police blocked the entrances to Taksim Square. The police force also blocked journalists from coming near the protesters. Lawyer and author Hürrem Sönmez spoke to Medyascope, evaluating the motives behind the withdrawal from Istanbul Convention.
There are various meanings and consequences to withdrawing from the Istanbul Convention. As the name implies, it is called the Istanbul Convention because that is where it was signed. And it was a treaty that Turkey was proud to be the first country to ratify. So, what could have possibly happened within a decade that legitimized Turkey to withdraw from this convention? In a country where every day we witness femicides and violence against women, how can we withdraw from a convention that is aimed to prevent gender-based violence and stands as a legal document for human rights? Of course, there is only a political answer to this. But we already know that femicides and violence against women are political. Accordingly, just like how violence is political, withdrawing from a convention is also political.
The presidential decree, which pulled Turkey out of the Istanbul Convention, was not only criticized and rejected across the nation, but across the world. On March 21, President of the United States, Joe Biden, released a statement in regards to the Istanbul Convention, calling the move deeply disappointing and a step backward in efforts to end violence against women. Countries should be working to strengthen and renew their commitments to ending violence against women, not rejecting international treaties designed to protect women and hold abusers accountable, Biden said. The Council of Europe leaders joined the United States president in condemning Turkey's withdrawal from a landmark international accord. On March 23, a statement of the President of the Congress on Turkey's announced withdrawal from the Istanbul Convention was released by the leaders. The statement read, "Leaving the convention would deprive Turkey and Turkish women of a vital tool to counter violence. We therefore call on the Turkish authorities not to weaken the international system to protect women against violence put in place by the Istanbul Convention." Multiple platforms within the United Nations also expressed deep concerns with regards to the decision. The United Nations in Turkey released a joint statement that viewed Turkey's withdrawal as undermining the significant efforts released so far to prevent violence against women. United Nations Women also released a separate statement reiterating the concerns and urging Turkey to reconsider this withdrawal.
Within 24 hours following President Erdogan's decree to withdraw from the Istanbul Convention, 6 women were murdered across Turkey.
Following the presidential decree by Erdogan to withdraw from the Istanbul Convention, which aimed to prevent violence against women, more women have lost their lives to femicide. While the women rights defenders protested on the streets denouncing the withdrawal, 6 more women were murdered within the 24 hours. 51 years old Meral Sivrikaya was murdered by her husband, whom she was divorcing. He broke into the house she was living in the southwestern city of Denizli and stabbed her with a knife from her back. 33 years old Nagihan Üste was killed by her fiancé Fırat Köksal, who was a police officer in the Aegean city of Izmir. Fırat opened fire on Nagihan and then shot himself. Serpil Fikirli was stabbed with a knife and killed by her 12-year-long husband, who had received a restraining order. 34 years old Rabia Doğan was shot by Besat Doğan. Rabia was going through a divorce process from Besat, who had been in prison for 4 years and was released due to the coronavirus measures. Elif Atay and her husband Mehmet Fevzi were found shot dead at their homes in the southeastern city of Adana. 4 people broke into the house of a couple who were foreign citizens in Istanbul. 4 people stabbed the man and the woman and escaped. The woman, who was Georgian, was named Teo and was killed in the attack. The man, who was Pakistani, was named Amir and got wounded in the attack.
President Erdogan has fired Central Bank Governor Naji Abbal just 4 months on the job following an increase in interest rates.
In a decree published in the official gazette early on Saturday, President Erdogan announced the departure of Naji Abbal, a former finance minister. Abbal was appointed governor in November 2020 after former governor Murat Uysal was dismissed. Abbal has been replaced by banking professor Şahap Kavcıoğlu, who has argued for lower interest rates. Kavcıoğlu was also an MP in the ruling Justice and Development Party from 2015 to 2018. In his 4 months in office, Naji Abbal won the praise of investors for hiking interest rates and promising tighter monetary policies. He was brought in to lead the central bank after the Turkish lira hit record lows and inflation soared. In his months in office, Abbal had hiked the benchmark rate a total of 875 basis points, working to rebuild the credibility of the central bank after it was damaged by years of unorthodox policies. His dismissal came after an interest rate hike by 200 basis points on March 18. The country's policy rate currently stands at 19%, among the top 10 in the world. Erdogan is openly averse to high interest rates, claiming high rates cause inflation, which stands in opposition to mainstream economic theory. According to Associate Professor Ümit Akçay, this type of high interest rate policy is something that is put in place when voter support falls. It is evident that a group among the capital holders, that is those who are harmed by high interest rates, have started to voice their disturbances, which has put the government in a difficult position. From what I understand, they would have had to pay a political price from which they could not have lifted themselves. So they made Naci Ağbal pay the price and save themselves.
On March 21st, Ömer Faruk Gergerlioğlu was taken into custody while performing a sit-in protest at the Turkish parliament for being stripped of his MP status.
Ömer Faruk Gergerlioğlu was the Kocaeli member of the parliament for the People's Democratic Party, but was stripped of his MP status on March 17 at the plenary session of the parliament. After his final ruling of conviction was announced, Gergerlioğlu along with other HDP MPs, refused to leave the parliament and started a Justice Watch protest. He did not leave the parliament until March 21, when he was detained by the police and was forced out of the building around 6 a.m. in the morning. Gergerlioğlu was detained by the police while going to the bathroom to perform an ablution. He was not allowed to do his morning prayer or to put on his clothes. On why he was detained and expelled from the parliament, the prosecutor's office said that the investigation had been launched on the grounds that Gergerlioğlu refused to leave the parliament building, continued acting like an MP, made statements and live broadcasts on social media, and stayed in a public building without the right to do so. He was released after giving his statements. A statement describing the way Gergerlioğlu was forcefully carried out from the building was released on the People's Democratic Party's official website on March 21. Prior to Gergerlioğlu's detainment, Nationalist Movement Party Chair Devlet Bahçeli called on the Assembly Speaker to remove Gergerlioğlu from the building, describing him as a separatist. If the parliamentary speaker's authority is restricted about this issue, it is possible to throw Gergerlioğlu together with his mattress by swiftly drafting a one-article legislative proposal and passing it at the General Assembly of the Parliament. This issue is urgent, said Bahçeli. Gergerlioğlu was sentenced to 2 years and 6 months in prison for propagandizing for a terrorist organization on February 21, 2018 by the Kocaeli 2nd Heavy Penal Court. This was on the grounds of a news story he retweeted on Twitter in 2016 about the Kurdish conflict. Gergerlioğlu's prison sentence from 2018 was recently upheld by the Court of Cassation on February 19, 2021. On March 5, Gergerlioğlu applied to the Constitutional Court under the complaint of violation of his freedom of speech and the right to engage in political action, but there was no further feedback. Apart from being a politician, Gergerlioğlu is a notable human rights advocate. Since he was elected to parliament in 2018, he has shed light to human rights infringements in Turkey. Recently, he raised awareness over the use of strip searches by police forces and participated in the Boğaziçi University protests against the government-appointed rector Melih Bulu. The incidents surrounding Gergerlioğlu are the latest blow from the government to put pressure on the HDP, whose members face many charges over alleged ties to the outlawed Kurdistan Workers' Party. Various HDP leaders have been imprisoned since 2016, including the former HDP co-chairs Figen Yüksekdağ and Selahattin Demirtaş. Selahattin Demirtaş has been behind bars for terrorism-related charges since November 2016 and has not been released despite 2 separate decisions by the European Court of Human Rights for his immediate release.
On March 24, Minister of Foreign Affairs Mevlüt Çavuşoğlu and the U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken held a brief talk on the sidelines of a NATO meeting, marking the first in-person meeting between the Biden administration and Turkey.
After brief talks, Çavuşoğlu said that he and his U.S. counterpart plan to hold a more comprehensive meeting. We agreed with the U.S. Secretary of State to hold a broader meeting in either the U.S. or Turkey, Çavuşoğlu told reporters in Brussels after the meeting, which he said lasted less than an hour. Blinken expressed concern over Turkey's withdrawal from the Istanbul Convention on Preventing and Combating Violence Against Women and Domestic Violence and emphasized the importance of democratic institutions and respect for human rights, according to a press release by the Department of State. On Turkey's procurement of the S-400 surface-to-air missile system from Russia, Çavuşoğlu reiterated that Turkey has already purchased the system and the deal was concluded. He ruled out reversing the decision, but repeated Turkey's offer to set up a commission with the US to clarify any technical issues. Blinken, on the other hand, urged Turkey not to retain the system, according to the US Department of State. Çavuşoğlu and his counterpart also talked about the situations in Syria, Iraq, Libya, and Afghanistan, according to statements by both sides.
EU leaders said on March 25th that the bloc will work on a mandate for the modernization of the customs union with Turkey, provided that Ankara abstains from renewed provocations or unilateral actions in breach of international law in the Eastern Mediterranean. The bloc also expressed their concerns with regards to the deterioration of the rule of law and fundamental rights in Turkey. Joining us to evaluate this declaration is Çiğdem Nas, faculty member at the Department of Political Science and International Relations at Yıldız Technical University and the Secretary General of the Economic Development Foundation. Hello, Professor Nas. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much.
So yesterday, as a result of the summit, the EU made a declaration on Turkey. And earlier in the week, a report was also prepared by the EU Foreign Policy Chief, Joseph Borrell, suggesting new steps to revive the EU-Turkey ties despite recent setbacks in Ankara's human rights record. So upon initial overview, how do you evaluate the declaration of yesterday? And is it surprising in light of the report that had been prepared earlier this week?
Yeah. I think the declaration was, in general, in parallel with the report that Borrell has prepared earlier. Of course, I think the EU now has a sort of a two-pronged strategy towards Turkey. On the one hand, there is this positive agenda, which stipulates more engagement with Turkey. This is based on, of course, the situation in the Eastern Mediterranean, provided that Turkey does not engage in new actions in terms of seismic explorations, etc., provided that the environment in Eastern Mediterranean stays calm as it is, then I think these positive measures will be implemented. However, if until June there is again some disturbance, and also there are some clashes of interest between Greece and Southern Cyprus and Turkey, then a series of sanctions can also be implemented. However, in the declaration, although it is stated that sanctions may also result, they haven't really specified the sanctions. However, in the report, we have a series of probable, let's say, or possible sanctions against Turkey. So we may say that this is positive, that they haven't really put too much emphasis on sanctions, but more on the positive measures between Turkey and the EU. As you have said, of course, in the last couple of weeks, we had some quite problematic developments in Turkey with the opening of the case against the HDP, and also the withdrawal from the Istanbul Convention, and the change in the central bank. So these were developments which were of some concern. However, we see that the European Council did not really focus very much on those negative developments, but looked as a whole, especially in the foreign policy agenda and the Eastern Mediterranean agenda. However, they have also noted in the conclusions that human rights, democracy, women's rights are an integral part of Turkey relationship. They haven't put too much emphasis on that, but they have just stated that. So I think it also attests to a change in the focus of the EU towards Turkey, rather than judging Turkey on the basis of the Copenhagen criteria. They have mostly focused on Turkey as a neighboring country, not as a candidate, but as a neighboring country, which is important for EU security, and thereby a more positive engagement was seen in the interest of the European Union. So as it is, they have accepted, I think, the situation in Turkey, and they have said that, okay, there are still, despite maybe problems in democracy and human rights, there are still areas of cooperation. Of course, number one concern for the EU is the refugee issue, and they have stated that they are going to continue the cooperation with regard to Syrian refugees, and also the customs union modernization, economic cooperation was also an area which could be improved between Turkey and the EU. However, they have also stated that as it is, there are some trade irritants on both sides, and of course for the EU, they are concerned about some, for example, extra tariffs that Turkey is implementing. So first they have said that we should talk about these existent problems in the customs union, and then if we can get over those problems, we can start discussing the customs union modernization. This is, of course, very much in line with Turkey's expectations, especially the business community in Turkey anticipates the start of customs union modernization. There was also mention of the high-level dialogues, including the previously initiated dialogues like economic dialogue, political, transport, energy, and they have also suggested adding, for example, climate as an area and public health as an area of discussion in the high-level dialogues. And in addition, also there was some mention of human-to-human, people-to-people contacts. They haven't mentioned the term visa liberalization, which is what Turkey mostly expects, but they have talked in more ambiguous terms, they say, about increasing people-to-people contacts. However, of course, we know that the visa liberalization issue is still very, let's say, difficult maybe for the European Union. And also there are some 6 criteria that Turkey has not yet fulfilled. So maybe based on Turkey's fulfillment of the remaining criteria, if it is possible in the coming period, then maybe visa liberalization can be an issue between the two sides. So we are maybe there are grounds for some optimism, but it is very much dependent on the foreign policy situation, and especially Turkey's policy in the Eastern Mediterranean.
Professor Nas, as you mentioned, I mean, yes, this is more concentrated on foreign policy, and the issue of human rights has taken, it seems, a back seat despite all these developments. And I mean, we've had very bad developments in recent times, but it has been ongoing for a while. I mean, Ankara is violating the European Court of Human Rights rulings. There have been widespread human rights violation. So why is the EU appeasing Erdogan? I mean, how do you evaluate their attitude towards such violations? Could they do more, or have they, given up and try to concentrate on perhaps areas where they can actually work with Turkey?
Mm-hmm. I think, especially in the previous period, the previous High Representative, Federica Mogherini, actually, I think, put it in a very quite clear perspective. She said, when asked about this, whether or not Turkey is still considered a candidate, etc., she said that, I mean, there are two options. We have this candidacy process, which is still continuing, but the conditions for candidacy are clear. I mean, if Turkey wants to proceed in that direction, then it has to fulfill the democracy, human rights, rule of law standards. However, of course, even if this avenue is not fulfilled, let's say the Copenhagen criteria, still Turkey is a very important partner for us. Turkey is a very important neighbor for us, especially regarding migration, refugee issue, energy, also fight against terrorism. All these are issues. Sorry. That the EU cannot ignore Turkey, I mean, as an important partner in these issues. So whether or not Turkey engages in democratization and human rights reform, the EU, I think, feels that it has to engage with Turkey in terms of providing for a resolution of these major problems, especially the refugee issue is the number one issue. And also, of course, when Turkey engages in a more assertive foreign policy, it may impinge on the interests of some EU member states. So I think the EU is also very much apprehensive about that. They have also seen it in the last year in Eastern Mediterranean, especially in the contested waters between Turkey and Greece, and also around Cyprus. We have seen that the tension has come to a very dangerous limit, very dangerous level. So they don't want to re-experience or relive this what has happened last year. So I think appeasing Turkey is very much related with the security and protecting the interest of the member states against Turkey. So keeping Turkey, let's say, as a partner that the EU can engage in cooperating, but also not providing a membership perspective to Turkey. So I think one important dilemma that the EU has against Turkey is that when it uses the sanctions card, let's say, against Turkey, when it says that, okay, you are moving away from Europe and there are infringements of human rights, fundamental freedoms, the list of sanctions that the EU can use against Turkey are quite limited, because even before these events happened, we have seen that the accession negotiations were not really proceeding very effectively. We had 8 chapters being suspended, and then more chapters have been suspended by the Greek Cypriots. Then we had the France under Sarkozy also providing some vetoes in the accession process. So the accession process was not really moving very swiftly, and we also had the problems in the customs union, etc. Since we didn't have much going on between Turkey and the EU, then the list of sanctions or the availability of sanctions that the EU had were also quite limited. So in 2019, we have seen that the EU adopted certain sanctions. For example, they have suspended the air transport agreement negotiations, which didn't really have much impact on Turkey. They talked about decreasing some of the IPA funds, which was again quite limited. So sanctions did not really work very effectively, I think. That's why maybe the EU failed to prevent the further deterioration of democracy and human rights in Turkey. So they had to accept the situation as it is, that Turkey has become more authoritarian, and the infringements of human rights continued. Of course, in the same period, the Turkish government, President Erdogan, also talked about reform, and that the EU membership is a strategic perspective. So he also kept this hope of reform alive. I mean, maybe not now, but in the future reforms may come. So this was also maybe Turkey's appeasement of the European Union, so that the EU would not engage in tougher measures or stricter measures. So the relations have come to such a level that the candidacy and membership perspective faded, although it is still on the table. I mean, it is still a probability. It has diminished, the possibility has diminished, and the nature of the relationship changed from a candidacy perspective to a more partnership or neighborhood relations perspective. And of course, the EU has also made some mistakes, but I think the paramount concern of the EU was to protect the interest of the member states.
I'm wondering, Professor Nas, if now that Biden has taken office in the United States and he has been underlining both democracy at home and democracy in the world, do you think the EU is perhaps expecting the United States to kind of be the bad cop here and deal with this issue in relation to Turkey?
Yes, I think so, because the EU in the December European Council has stated that the policy towards Turkey would be coordinated with the United States. So I think they very much counted on the Biden administration, maybe to take a tougher stance against Turkey and to engage in some more pressure on Turkey in the direction of democratization, human rights, rule of law. So this would also, of course, benefit the European Union. So I think here maybe we could say the bad cop could be the United States, or they thought that if the United States entered into the picture and let's say placed more pressure on Turkey, then the EU would still continue the cooperation in refugee and other issues with Turkey, and at the same time Turkey would engage in a reform process which would be also triggered by the new United States administration. So we have also seen that in the March European Council there were these positive initiation of some positive measures, but still I think we are going to have to wait for the June European Council in order to see whether or not there will be some more concrete steps. And here the EU has also maybe left some more time for the Biden administration, maybe to shape its approach towards Turkey.
Mm-hmm. Before speaking about the June summit and what you expect in terms of developments, I want to come back to the Eastern Mediterranean and the tensions there. And we've seen indeed that these tensions have largely been subsided since Ankara pulled back from the region last year. And on Wednesday, Erdogan, during the General Congress, Ordinary Congress of his party, also spoke about foreign policy, about taking a softer stance in foreign policy, and raising the number of friends and allies on an international and on an international level and in the diplomatic realm. So how do you evaluate this shift in tone coming from Turkey? Is it also kind of, because Turkey in its foreign policy seems to be assertive and then pull back and so forth. So how do you see this as a sustainable kind of pullback, or can we expect a change in relation to its stance in Eastern Mediterranean once again?
Yeah, I think, of course, I mean, Turkey's foreign policy, assertive foreign policy, have also been very important in the internal politics of Turkey. I mean, it has been sort of a card which the government has used in order to prop up its popularity at home. So it has been very much linked with the internal power struggles. However, the assertive foreign policy that we have seen, especially not only in the Eastern Mediterranean, but also in Syria, in Libya, in the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict, I think Turkey has seen that this such an assertive foreign policy can no longer be sustainable for Turkey, because I mean it requires a lot of energy, a lot of commitment, a lot of finance, and together with the deterioration of the economic situation, I think it has become more difficult for the government to sustain this assertive foreign policy. So now maybe there is a balancing act on the part of Turkey. After a very assertive year of foreign policy, they maybe now changed gear and let's say changed the tone of the foreign policy, a more moderate maybe stance in foreign policy. And also we have seen that especially in the Eastern Mediterranean balances, Turkey has found itself quite lonely, and some alliances have been formed against Turkey, which also made it more difficult for Turkey to protect and defend its interests in the region. So therefore, I think maybe Turkey is now shifting gear and trying to engage in more diplomatic ventures and also more reconciliation in the area. However, of course, there is no guarantee that there is not going to be a return to more assertive foreign policy. It would depend on the circumstances, I think. And also, last year, I think we have also seen that as a result of this assertive foreign policy, we have entered into some serious clashes with not only Greece, but also maybe France and other member states. Even there was also an operation which was carried out to a vessel, which included also some German officers, etc. So I think maybe the Turkish government has also seen that this is not tenable. I mean, if you continue this assertive foreign policy, then it may lead to even some maybe military sort of clashes, etc., which would not be really very wise or very logical under the circumstances. So I think this also assertive foreign policy has also served its usefulness. I think Turkey has shown that, okay, it is there, it has a considerable military power, naval power also, and also it has developed this new defense technologies, drones, etc. So I think it has made a statement that, okay, it is a regional power, it is there, it cannot be ignored. So now I think it is time for more diplomacy and for Turkey to be more accepted as a more credible, let's say, sort of actor. Maybe that's why it is doing that. But of course, in order to for Turkey to be accepted, I think, as a credible actor also for the West and for Europe, another very important aspect would be the internal reforms in terms of both economic governance, a more stable, more rational economic governance, and also, of course, especially rule of law, independence of judiciary, human rights, fundamental freedoms. They should go hand in hand. So we will see whether or not Turkey will be able to achieve that in the coming days, or maybe a reverse, more negative developments will follow. And I think the June European Council also, there the European Council will also make a decision based on Turkey's record in the coming months.
Professor Çiğdem Nas, thank you so much for having joined us today.
Thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me.
On March 24th, the ruling Justice and Development Party held its 7th Ordinary Congress in the capital, Ankara. The crowds both at the Congress and leading up to it showed that COVID-19 measures were completely ignored, raising concerns for both pro-government and oppositional figures.
During the Congress, President Erdogan was re-elected as the chairman of the party for the 7th time. Erdogan received all 1,428 valid votes out of a total of 1,431 cast ballots. It was announced that the party's Central Decision-Making and Administrative Board has been enlarged from 50 members to 75 at the Congress, with 21 changes made to the body. According to Medyascope editor-in-chief, Erdogan's 2-hour speech failed to address Turkey's and its citizens' real concerns. Erdogan spoke about the economy and foreign policy, reiterating a need for a new constitution. One highlight from the speech includes Erdogan's reflection on the potential of the country's economy, where he urged the public to put their under-the-mattress gold and foreign currency assets into use with the economy and production, while calling on international investors to trust Turkey's strength and potential. Thousands of AKP supporters filled the stands of a 10,000-people capacity complex, drawing criticism over violations of the government's own social distancing measures amid the pandemic. The word lebaleb, meaning full to the brim, started trending on Turkish Twitter on Wednesday, following videos of AKP delegates singing anthems on buses they filled without masks on. The diversity present at the Congress, with people coming from all around the country, could translate to a countrywide explosion in cases if attendees are not careful upon returning to their home provinces. Meanwhile, President Erdogan addressed the crowds gathered outside as the hall hit capacity, stating that the falling snow would wipe away the germs. The AKP has been holding provincial congresses with large crowds since mid-January. The party has been widely criticized for these crowded congresses, as COVID cases have been on the increase over the past weeks in the country. The AKP has been called out on its hypocrisy, as many restaurants, cafes, unions and associations are struggling under COVID-19 restrictions.
And now let's take a look at the coronavirus-related developments of the week. According to the data released by the Ministry of Health, the daily number of new cases on March 25th has been announced as 28,731, and the number of deaths as 157. These numbers have led to the total number of cases to reach 3,120,013, and the death toll to become 30,619.
On March 24, Minister of Health Fahrettin Koca announced that the BioNTech vaccine will be used for the first time in Turkey as of next week. As reported by the state-run Anadolu Agency, Koca has said that with the arrival of the latest batch in Turkey on Wednesday, there are 1.4 million doses of BioNTech coronavirus vaccine ready for use. Today, over 700,000 doses of BioNTech vaccine have also arrived in the country, so we have received nearly 1.4 million doses of vaccine ready for use, Koca said on Twitter. He said that Turkey received around 750,000 doses on March 23 and recalled that 5,800 doses of BioNTech vaccine arrived last week to be used for tests.
The ownership of Istanbul's Gezi Park, the center of anti-government protests in 2013, has been transferred to national from municipal ownership. This transfer has drawn criticism from the main opposition-run city municipality, which has said it would challenge the decision.
On March 12, the property of the park was handed over to the General Directorate of Foundations, which is part of the Ministry of Culture and Tourism. The directorate said the area was being transferred to one of its foundations, the Sultan Beyazıt Han Foundation. The Istanbul Metropolitan Municipality, which is run by Ekrem İmamoğlu from the main opposition Republican People's Party, criticized the decision, noting that it was about to start the new Taksim Square project to make the square a green area again. The latest transfer decision, it said, was intended to prevent the project. The new design of Taksim Square was chosen with the votes of Istanbul residents in November 2020. The municipality plans to launch a legal process against the decision, it added in the statement. Gezi Park is one of Istanbul's most iconic places. In 2013, hundreds of thousands of people marched in Istanbul and across Turkey against plans to redevelop the park, posing a serious challenge to then Prime Minister Erdogan. Erdogan had approved plans to build a replica of Ottoman barracks in lieu of the park, But such plans were abandoned after months of demonstrations. However, in 2016, Erdogan said he remained determined to reclaim our history by building there.
That's all from This Week in Turkey. See you next Friday at 9 p.m. Good night.